way this vacuum switch works is there's a shaft that runs through the transfer case, and on that shaft rides the shift fork, which slides the transfer case in and out of four-wheel drive or to 4-low. So there's a ball bearing on the end of this that rides on that shaft, and depending on the position of your shift lever, it actuates the switch, the plunger, up and down, and when it does that, it routes vacuum to, I don't know exactly which ones these go to, but anyway, just like I said, this is going to be going away for me anyway, so it's not a concern. I'm just trying to tell you what that is. So let's get down with the disassembly, and we'll start with this since I was just talking about it. Okay. See, there's the little ball bearing I was talking about. Can't push it in by hand. It's got a lot of spring pressure to it. But anyway, when this thing goes up and down, it pushes the plunger up and down and reroutes vacuum to wherever it needs to go. So we're going to set that off to the side because I don't need it. Next, we're going to take out the speedometer drive. I want to save these because this is going to be what goes on the new speedometer drive that I set in here. So I'm going to put that on my little magnetic tray there. Okay, it goes through this mounting piece here, and when it turns on the other end, and that's what drives your speedometer. Now this is only if you have a mechanical speedometer. The difference between this type of speedometer drive and the electronic speedometer drive is very, very similar. So we'll show you that when we get ready to put the new one in. But you can take this mechanical drive out and you can put the electronic drive right in there, not a problem. They'll work. If you'll pay attention to the alignment of this shaft to where it mounts into the transfer case, if you'll see, if you turn this, it's an eccentric design, which means that when you turn this, this is going to move back and forth because it's not mounted in the center. You see what I'm saying? So what that allows you to do is if you get this put in and your speedometer doesn't work, then you should be able to turn this thing to get this gear to engage with the gear inside on the output shaft. Next, we're going to take off the tail cone extension. This is a 15mm bolt on this one. Alright, and this is going to be stuck on with some sealant. So if you're doing a slip yoke eliminator, you don't really have to be all that careful with this stuff. But in the interest of making a video, I'm going to be as careful with this stuff as possible because I never know. Someone might be, you know, just trying to do a repair on this thing. So I just got a mallet. Whoa. There we go. All right. So there's really nothing in there. There's just a bushing that the slip yoke rides on. So we'll set that off to the side because we're not going to need that. Now if you'll look here, this bearing supports the output shaft, keeps it from flopping around. And that bearing rides in the tail housing here. So what we've got to do is we've got to take this snap ring off. This kind of snap ring plier is what I've found to be the best for me. So you can see it sticks off a little bit, gives you a little bit of clearance. So just take that, get it in there. Yeah, see, this is what happens when you say this stuff works easy. There we go. Let me get it up here so I can see a little better about what I'm doing. All right. Now, just walk it off. There we are. Okay, now I've got it almost all the way off, but you can see it's not quite. So once you get it out of its groove, then you can take a screwdriver and pop it the rest of the way off, just like that. Now, to get it off the shaft, I can get a better bite on it now. And we're just going to get this. Come on. Alright. Hang on to that, don't lose it. Now the tail housing can come off. So, let's see, those look like 13s there. Okay, there are 5 bolts holding the tail housing on. So let's get that. Something with a little more oomph here. Uh-oh, there we go. Alright. The tail housing, you've got a couple of options here to break it loose, because it's just like the tail housing extension. The tail housing extension, it's sealed in there with silicone, so we can knock it on these little ears right here to get it loose. So let's try that. Let's see here. Oh. Okay, like I was saying, get yourself a couple of pry bars here and see if you can just pry this thing off so you don't hurt yourself. Now let's see here. Come on. There we go. Alright, let's get these out of the way. Now the tail housing will slip right off. And we're not going to be reusing this. Okay. This is your oil pump. Take note of how it sits in the case right now. Let's see. Right now, it is sitting on the outside of the case, and if you'll look on the tail housing extension, you can see recesses in it that you're supposed to align with the pump. This keeps the pump from spinning freely inside the case. Here's the shaft that I was telling you goes in and out. See, I've got this little ramped section on there. That's for that ball bearing. So when you shift the transfer case, you'll see, let me get this thing. You see how it popped out there? Now we'll go back up. Yeah, and then it goes in. Okay. Where did it go? That's what this was riding on, right here. So when this goes in and out, so it goes in and out like this. There you go. And then it lets that ball bearing pop back up in there, or pop back out. Okay, so now we're going to split the case apart. 8 bolts holds it together all the way around. This one on the top is a 12-point socket or a 12-point wrench. The rest of them are 6-point, and I believe these are going to be 15s, and I think that one's going to be a 10, but let's just check and make sure. 15s. And on the back side of this bolt here is a bracket that holds a vent tube. Comes up and just basically holds it to keep it from getting all bent out of shape. So we got to take the nut off the back side of that first, and in our situation we can get rid of that because we're probably not going to need it. But we got to get this, and I think that's a 10 millimeter. Yep, 10 millimeter. Okay. Now let me see if I've got a 12-point socket. There we go, because you can see these things got a little bit of blue Loctite on them. So now all the bolts are out of the case. And if you'll look around on the transfer case, you're going to see these little slots. See this slot right here? This is so you can put a screwdriver or a pry bar in there. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. But anyway, there's quite a few of those around the transfer case, so just find them, and that's what you'll want to do. You'll want to pry on those slots because you don't want to pry on the machine surfaces. You don't want to just jam a screwdriver in between the case halves and anything like that, because what you're going to wind up doing is you're going to wind up creating a spot for leaks. So always pry in those little spots there. So let's try that. I've just got a regular flathead screwdriver. I'm going to stick it in that little slot. Oh yeah, see? It just popped loose real easy. And there's bound to be, yep, there's one right there. So let's just take our screwdriver and pop that in there. Yep, see? Now that. And I believe, oh, there's just two of them, so one over here. Maybe I should get another screwdriver. Might help. Okay, I got another screwdriver over here, and then one here. So there we go. Now we've got the case halves separated at least. Set this back down. I need to set that case on something. Ooh, look at all that nastiness coming out of there. All right. There we go. Now, on this case half, like I told you before, the oil pump rides on the back case half, and this is a G-rotor style pump, and when the output shaft turns, it turns this pump, which creates suction, and it picks it up. Ooh-wee, look at all that nastiness down in there. We're definitely going to have to clean this out. But there's the pickup. You can see the tube. You can see the tube coming from the pump, and there's the pickup down there. And it's a good thing I put these towels down here, because that's a lot of gunk coming out of there. And I made a newbie mistake. I forgot to take the output yoke off before I started all this. So I'm going to have to flip it around, and hopefully I can get that thing off without too much fanfare. Remember earlier when I was talking about the speedometer drive gear? Well, it fits in the housing, and it meshes with this worm gear. It actually goes in this side, but for demonstration purposes, I'm going to show you how it mates up like that. Okay, so then when this turns, it turns that gear. See how that works? And that's what gives you your speedometer drive. Now, like I said, I need to take that front yoke off, and I'm sure that's a metric size nut, since everything else on this thing seems to be metric, but a 1 1/8 drive socket will fit. So let's see if we can't get it off of there. There we go. She came off. Ooh, that thing's warm. All right, now let's pop that off, get our hammer, and just pop it off. All right, we're going to save that because we'll need it. Now let's turn this thing back around. And, oh, you know what I want to do here? I want to take this bolt out, because that way I can demonstrate pretty easily how this thing actually works. Okay, so you'll see that bolt is actually pretty short, and it's got a recess in it, and the spring rides inside that recess. And there is a ball bearing inside that I need to get out. So I can probably move this shift handle here, and that ball bearing should come out. Okay. Oh, okay. It's not quite a ball bearing. It is a ball end plunger. Fits in there like that. And this is what gives you your spring pressure against the rooster comb inside of your shifter. See, now I can shift it very easily because there's not a whole lot of spring pressure there. So let's put that in the keep pile. Okay, I'll show you how this thing works here. Once you take that spring, I don't know if I was even recording a while ago, but this spring acts kind of like a detent ball. This is what goes up in the bottom of the transfer case, and it pushes up against this rooster comb here and locks it into gear so your shifter doesn't flop all over the place. Now, how your four-wheel drive works is that, see, right now the shifter is in two-wheel drive mode. This sprocket is what drives the chain to the front output. So let me stick the front output back in here just so you can kind of understand what I'm saying here. Just imagine there's a chain going all the way around. Now right now you're in two-wheel drive. So the shift fork, as I mentioned before, spring pressure is keeping the shift fork pushed toward the front of the transfer case. So this gear can spin freely and independently of the output shaft gear. I see it turns there, but I mean, if I just hold it very lightly, you can see it turns freely. Does not lock. So when you shift it into four-wheel drive, you'll notice this shift fork comes forward. This ring, I'm not exactly sure what kind of ring they call it, but it's just a gear-driven ring. Let me get it lined up better there. So then, when you shift it into four-wheel drive, you'll see this rooster comb pushes out on the shift fork. There you go. So now you see that? Now, again, because this ring has this gear and the output shaft tied together, so they cannot spin independently of one another. So naturally, when you've got a chain coming over, it has no other choice but to drive this front output. Okay, let's take the output shaft out, the rear output shaft, let me say that. I've already taken the front output shaft out again. So when I pull this output shaft out, this gear is going to come with it, and also most likely I think the shift fork is going to come with it as well. So let's pull that. Oh, nope. Shift fork stayed in there. So this is your gear cluster inside the transfer case, and we'll get to all this stuff here in just a minute, but that's the front drive gear. So let's take this again. We're not going to need that where we're going. So there is your ring, and I'm going to pull this shift shaft out. Now note how this thing comes out. There's a tapered side. It was facing in on this one. Now, this is your planetary or your low range shift fork. So you see the operation of this. Just let me take all this stuff out of here, and we'll stick that back in. There we go. Now, you see this shift fork is driven by this pin riding up and down on this thing that I keep calling a rooster comb. This shifter brings this gear in and out. Okay. let's get this out of your way here. Brings this gear in and out, okay? All right, let's see if we can't get this planetary out. I think I may wind up having to take the okay. Now we're going to take off this shifter, and I'm already regretting not keeping up with my tools here. I'm terrible about this. Okay, let me put these back where they belong. Where is my 15 millimeter? There it is, right there in front of me. Let's see if we can break this loose. There we go. Pretty easy. Now this is your shift lever. I'll take that and put it on the keep pile. Now we can get the rooster comb out. Now you see why I call it a rooster comb, because it looks like the comb on the back of a rooster's head. That's just what they call them in an automatic transmission. So that's kind of what I'll call it here too. You do not have to take all that out to do a slip yoke eliminator, but like I said, I'm just doing a full tear down on it. Just so. Okay, so now we need to get the input shaft out, and to do that we have to take this bearing retainer off the back. I believe that's a 10 millimeter. Yes, 10 millimeter. Put those in the keep pile. All right, now there should be another pry point here somewhere. There ought to be. Oh, there's one right there. Well, I probably just destroyed that. Okay. Oh, wow. Wow. I was going to tell you that, see, this has got a groove in it. Now, see, this is your pry point, and that's your pry point. This is an oil passage, and it goes right here. And this is a perfect opportunity for me to tell you guys, when you're putting, let's just take this for example right here. When you're putting two machined surfaces together, like this and like this, just use the minimum amount of sealant possible, because you're putting you're just putting two machined surfaces together. You're not sealing up the Grand Canyon. You're just need to seal up two surfaces, and this is why you do that right here. So I haven't messed with it. You can see right here all this junk right there. You see that oil drain or that oil passage? It is completely blocked off with sealant. So just use the bare minimum, guys. That's all you need. We're going to remove the input shaft, and again, use your flat snap ring removers. I'll be back in about an hour when I find that. All right, I found it. Put that on the save pile, but you can see how easy that thing comes out once you remove that snap ring. So anyway, so let's get this out of the way. The whole planetary and everything came out with it. Okay, in my case, I'm not going to use this input shaft or this planetary, but in the interest of making the video, I will show you how this thing comes out. And let me find my screwdriver wherever I put it. So what you'll want to do is, you've got two pry points here, and I don't know if you can see that or not. Now you see, what you'll want to do is you'll want to work that snap ring out just like that, And do the same on the other side. And it just pops right out. So now the input gear can come off. The retainer, we're going to save that. We're going to need it when we put this thing, well, actually we're not going to need that. We're going to, like I said, we're not going to be using any of this on the build when it gets starting to get put back together on the next episode. But I am going to put this case half in my parts washer there and get all the gunk and grime out of it. And I'm waiting on the slip yoke eliminator to come in, and I have not taken my old transfer case out of the Jeep yet, so I do not have the correct input shaft to go in this thing just yet. But stay tuned for next time, and we're going to start putting this thing back together. I hope you guys learned something. I mean, I know that I'm not the smartest person in the world of how all this stuff works, but I think I've got a pretty decent understanding of it. So this is not the end all be all of, you know, theory of operation and all that kind of stuff like that, because obviously I still can't figure out how a planetary works. But anyway, stay tuned for next time, and we're going to start putting it back together, and hopefully we'll be putting it in the Jeep before too long. So thanks for watching.